Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery and I popped off the tops of my two containers that I'm storing some castings in. I've got castings stored elsewhere too, but these are the places where I have some, I believe it's African nightcrawler and red wiggler, or maybe mixed worm population castings. Either way, pretty sure that what I've got here is the nightcrawler castings, and if you were with me last time when we checked in my night crawlers, I had actually finished doing the final haul out of baby worms from the cocoon nursery, and we had pretty much dubbed that container that the castings were in as depopulated, and the only to-do item for that system was to dump out the castings in a way. But I don't know, if you were with me you might remember that there was something about those castings just didn't seem right. There was a lot of debris floating around in the stuff, so I thought before putting in this stuff with a bunch of debris in it, before just dumping it in with a bunch of nice clean castings, I really wanted to try getting all the debris out. And if you were with me last time, you'll remember there was this whole bunch of, little white specks. I even tried grabbing one of these little things and sort of stretching it and pulling it to see if it would break, and it didn't. It's sort of stretched, making me think that it's some sort of a, not organic material. And I've always wondered about what the material would look like if I had a much finer screen than what I normally use. So I had this laying around and I thought, well, this ain't that much. I'll just screen the contents of this nursery using this and see what I ended up with. And, well, I really like it. It's really nice stuff. Check it out. It's fine castings. And I guess the one really remarkable thing about this material was how quickly we managed the migration of the worms out of it last time we were in here to haul out the baby worms, because it had only been 11 days prior to that we had set up a baiting zone for the worms to be attracted to, and it seemed to us like the castings were pretty much depopulated. But it's not surprising when you miss a worm this size, little puny guy. And I'll admit, I did bump into maybe 3, or now maybe this will be the 4th worm that I rescued out of here. And I kind of thought I might see more since I was going through here quite thoroughly. But it does seem like we managed to get almost all of them, here we go, during the initial haul out. And where'd the other guy go? Did I drop him? Or is that the guy? Same guy? I don't know. I was looking over here and maybe I dropped the other guy. But either way, I'm going to put him in with the rest of the bin. And that's the bin we're here to feed. I just figured I'd show what happened here, because the idea of me emptying this was meant to be kind of off-camera stuff, but it also seemed to me like something that I couldn't do with all this junk in there. So I thought I would just sort of reveal on the camera what happened here before this stuff went into storage. And maybe I'll just spend a couple more minutes to see if anything else sort of starts moving out here on the surface, and see if I can rescue a couple more babies, because look at the size of these little guys. They are so small. I believe the last one that I pulled out is the smallest, and they're virtually invisible until they start moving, and there are a few of them in here. And I guess we'll have to up the worm count by 1, 2, 3, 4 worms. Oh, and I think I even threw 1 or 2 in. Oh yeah, I rescued 3 or 4, right? 4 plus these 4, we rescued 8, so I got to up the number by 8. So I think it's time to get this out of our way so we can get the adults fed. Let's get that going and say goodbye to these castings, and we'll be taking off the label too. Where's the label? Ah, there it is. We kept the label on just to remind us what this was, but it's time to put this bin back into the pool of available bins to do jobs in. But let's get the adults over here and get them fed. Alrighty, so it's been 12 days. Not sure if I mentioned that earlier. 12 days since we were in here last, and there was 12 days that pile of castings just kind of sat there, and I kept seeing all the little white specks in it, and I knew that I couldn't just dump the material into storage that way. And I told myself that I'm going to have to deal with it before I come back in here to feed these little guys, so it was inevitable that we'd have to take care of it, and I figured, what the heck, I'll just include it in the video now. I meant to do all that kind of off camera, but at least this way you got to see how I got rid of all that debris. And I'm thinking that debris might even dry a bit more and become more flaky and might release some more castings, but if it doesn't, it doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. I'm even kind of wondering if this stuff would have further broken down. It's just kind of weird how when I grabbed one of these things, I start tugging it. I'm not sure if the camera catches it, but it does sort of springy, exhibit some springy kind of, I don't know, spring back before it tears. I don't know. To me, it just seemed like it wasn't really going anywhere. Maybe it was never going to break down, or maybe it would if I gave it time. So you know what? Something we've been doing lately is sort of piling up all the not the castings, the top surface debris, or at least getting it out of the way so we can see how our bin's looking. In a lot of cases, I'll actually remove it from the bin. We don't have to do that today. A lot of times I'll use the container we just put that other junk into. And right now I just don't have any place to offload this stuff. So we'll just push it out of our way so we can examine how things are going on down here. 12 days to eat stuff that was probably gone in no time. They got, I think it was cucumber and melon for some reason. For some reason that sort of sticks in my head. And if that's the case, then there probably won't be many leftovers in here. Oh, you know what? I should follow up with old business first before we get into new business on this. What is this? Today, this will be the 10th feeding, right? Because our check-in 12 days ago was not just a check-in, it was a feeding. It was the 9th feeding at that time. And we also added worms. So I didn't want to go too far down the road without mentioning how many we estimated the worm count to be in last time's introduction of extra worms from the nursery. So basically we started out with a bin that had started out with 230 worms. So what it really was 12 days ago might be more, who knows. And then what we estimated the addition of worms to be last time, 12 days ago, was 179. That's an averaged value of maybe 11 people's guesses. I believe the first one was, no, that was 8 guesses. This was 5 people's guesses. Either way, we've got a little bit over 2,200 worms in here, according to that, right? So let's dig in, see how things worked in the feeding area. So, you know, 131 day bin in the neighborhood of 10 feedings. This thing's still got a ways to go, I would say. I got plenty of space in this bin to keep going with these little guys. I think it's really just a matter of how generous do we want to be with the bedding. Do we want to keep building out their space so that they feel they've got plenty of room to roam in and expand their population into? And I always think that the answer to that should be yes. Especially in the summertime. Right now in my part of the world, we're in the summer, so things are warmer, and that's the time of year when the worms do seem to be pretty active, and not only more active on the breakdown of the foods that you give them, but also I think a little bit more active on the breeding and multiplying their numbers, expanding their numbers. So I think this is the time to, you know, promote that behavior, give them the room they need, give them the sense that they've got plenty of food whenever they need it, and as much as they need. So you can see all kinds of large chunks of bedding that I've bumped into on our way down. I even put a few of them off to the side. The only things that aren't bedding are these mango seeds. This is one that's actually in pretty good shape compared to the other one I saw here earlier. This is just the very end of it. Yeah, but it's still got a little bit of this side and a little bit of that side. So there's probably other fragments of it floating around that we'll bump into here and there, or maybe not. Very nice stuff down here. The material feels like it's got just the right moisture level. To me, it seems like the worms are all, I don't know, they're all kind of nice and lively and have nice color to them. So I think, you know, just from looking at them, you would have to think that they're probably pretty happy in here. I think this is just another fragment of that seed shell or whatever. I think, yeah. All right, I think we've made a pretty good amount of space down here for these little guys. And, you know, we did collect a good bit of very nice bedding material. So I'm thinking we might as well put that to somewhat better use than just floating out on the surface and sitting out there dry, serving no purpose really that way, right? Get all that stuff down beneath all these nice foods that they're getting. It'll probably soak up their juices. These foods are all frozen, so they'll emit juices as they thaw. And if we introduce all these old bits of food that we bumped into along the way down there too, I think we'll have a really nice foundation to put our feeding down onto. However, I also think it would be wise to follow through on that idea from earlier of adding some more bedding, so you know what, let's do just that. Lately I've been using a lot of napkins like this, large chunks of bedding, even just whole pieces of newspaper crumpled up a little bit, tossed into the feeding zone, and my poor shredded paper and leaf concoction has been getting like no attention at all. So I thought, you know what, let's get that stuff going again. It's been quite some time since I fed any of my worm bins any of this stuff. I don't know, I guess it felt to me like I was running a little bit low on this stuff, so I started like turning to using other things, and it seems like I just almost stopped using it. So this is probably the first time in over a week that I'm feeding with this stuff. So what do we got here? We got nice new coffee filter. So more bedding that we can utilize down here is the old coffee filter. So why don't we give that sort of a promotion today, and it's no longer a top covering sort of feeding zone indicator type piece of paper in here anymore. Now it's going right into active service down here in the feeding area. Direct contact with the worms and the food. Alright, that's a nice base, I think, to start dropping in all these yummy foods. That's almost all the coffee, but we could save a little bit more to sprinkle it on something if we see something that looks like it would benefit from having some coffee sprinkled into it. And this, I could tell, is an interesting mix of different things. I could already see the pizza crusts, which is something you don't always see in my stuff that comes out of my freezer. Here's another one. But I figured, what the heck, I was putting away some stuff to go into the freezer anyway. Stuff intended to be worm foods, and I had these couple pizza crusts laying around. You know, sometimes you're just not in the mood to eat the crusts. Other times you are, right? But sometimes no. And they seem like they would be good additions to the feeding area of one of my future bins. And this bin just happens to be the lucky batch of worms that gets it. So what I'm sprinkling in here is my grit. The grit that I'm using is pulverized eggshell. And worms benefit from not only being given nice bedding and nice food and moisture, but they also benefit from getting grit to help with the breakdown of their foods. We'll save onto that coffee filter to replace the old one that had been draped out across the top to show us where we last fed. And you know what? As long as I was already showing off this nifty little napkin here, why don't we just go ahead and include that as part of our feeding too. We'll just sort of place it out here on top, and you know, I think we can do one other thing here to sort of guarantee that the worms are going to come up for this piece of paper too and pretty much eat it all up, is put some of my worm chow all over it. I got a feeling this paper's got no chance now. So my worm chow's running pretty low. I got to get my ingredients out and start thinking of how I'm going to whip up my next batch. So that's going to be on my to-do list coming up pretty soon too. So let's start bringing some more of this paperish type stuff, or whatever it was that I scraped off the top surface. Get that down here where the food and the action's going to be. There's a good bit of it here and there. Not bad. The system is still got a ways to go, so if there's still, you know, bedding fragments scattered around throughout the material, that's fine. See lots of sticks even. I don't know how sticks like this are going to do, but we'll see. Stems of leaves, all those things kind of still holding out. And I just hope we don't have too much of that, whatever that paper was that was evidently not breaking down. It wasn't even paper, I guess, at this point. Whatever that stuff that ended up in my mixed shredded paper collection. Hopefully we didn't just add a whole bunch more of that stuff that's never going to break down. But you know what? Before we close up shop here, let's just give the outer edges a little bit of a till. Things feel pretty good out here with this system being covered with only a piece of newspaper. Sometimes I wonder if we're at risk of losing the system's moisture to evaporation, but that doesn't seem to be happening, fortunately. Things look really nice out there. As you can see, the material's all nice and crumbly too, so none of it's really clumping up or anything. None of it feels muddy or overly damp. That's really good. And let's just really quickly see if that's the same story on this end too. Here it seems almost like more castings in a way. Or somehow flakier. It's hard to say. I'm not sure what I'm sensing, but it's a little different somehow. It just somehow seemed like it rolled off my fingers a little bit more readily, and not because it was drier, if that makes sense. I don't know. That would be your first immediate reaction, is to say, well, it flowed more readily because it was more dry, but I don't think that's quite the case, oddly enough. So I don't know, one of the weird mysteries of worm castings, right? Alright, I'm done here. I just got to put this feeding zone indicator where it belongs, which is right over the middle where we just last fed, showing us where we put the 10th feeding in this 131-day-old African nightcrawler worm bin. So that's it for the video, everyone. A couple little to-dos I've got is to maybe get rid of this stuff, or maybe come back at some point, see if it'll further break down, if it's dried a bit more. Probably off-camera stuff. I've got the castings themselves have to be poured over into that bucket and cover up the buckets, but all that stuff's boring. I'm not going to keep you around for that. Before I go, though, let me just really quickly say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. All right, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.